everyone, I'm Diane Woodworth and welcome to the K-12 Corner. Today I'm joined by Jim Dubois here from Goshen Community Schools. He's the superintendent here. So welcome and glad to have you. And welcome to you, Jim.
Thanks,
Thank
Diane.
you. Thank you for doing
We've
this.
known each other for a long time.
A while, yeah.
Yeah,
it's all good.
It'll be a fun conversation.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it. So I guess to get started, so our audience knows a little bit about you, would you tell us a little bit about how you got in K-12 education and what your roles have been, and that led you to here. Right. So how is all that?
I won't give you all the gory details, but I'll give you quite a few. I grew up in Elkhart and went to school in Elkhart and went away to college, DePaul University. I was a psychology major, wanted to be a therapist, I thought, and work with kids always. And so I didn't finish with the teaching license, though, but I came back and I worked in the hospital system with a local one here called Oaklawn, and I worked there in the children and adolescence unit in the inpatient hospital right here in County Road 15.
I kind of forgot that.
It was a brand new
right.
hospital.
Oh, yeah.
And anyway, long story short, I decided that I loved working with kids and I love working with kids that struggle, but I also wanted to coach and do some other things and work with kids that I thought for 30 years or 35 or 40 years that I'd be in the profession. I want to be an educator. And I come from a family of educators. I like to brag about my grandmother, who was a kindergarten teacher for Penn Harris Madison here, the first one they ever hired. And she rode back and forth on horse and buggy to Ball State and was the only woman in her graduating class of 1925. And she came back, though, and got married and had children instead of working right away.
Right.
And then, but then went back into the profession after the kids were all grown up, and she was a grandmother. So
that's a cool story.
It's a cool story,
I like it.
And so then my father was the only one of her children that became an educator. And he was a basketball coach and a high school biology teacher, and did a lot of different things in education. But and then I come from a family of teachers, brother and sister teachers, and but I'm the only administrator, so that was kind of a transitioning there. Right. I was teaching in Penn Harris Madison, was where I first was hired to be an elementary teacher, and then Dean Spiker had asked me, called me in his office my second year and said, "You ought to think about being a principal." So I got my principal's license, not ever really wanting to be a principal.
Yep.
And then there was a job outside the classroom, kind of a teacher on special assignment.
Oh, okay.
And I did that work for a year and then ended up becoming principal of Elm Road in Penn Harris Madison, and then kind of transitioned my career, a few twists and turns in there, but I ended up after so many years in Penn, I went to Jimtown with the idea that Jerry Cook, the current superintendent, had told me he was going to retire in a couple of years and said, "You come over and open this new school and then maybe you can be the superintendent." And it worked out that way. Jerry took 6 years, I think, instead of a couple, but I needed those couple years to get ready. And so then I was superintendent there for 11 years. And, here I am. I did retire once, and I came back and did interim here in Goshen, and, I'm back at it for 7 months now.
Yeah.
So it's been a blast, though.
I love it.
And I would be remiss to say that I do have 4 children and 8 grandchildren, and I've got 2 more on the way. So
2 more on the way. How exciting!
Yeah.
Yes, that's great.
Yeah.
And you have grandchildren in this district.
Yes, I do.
I think
that's one of the attractions to come back here. Was
of course.
I have a son that teaches business, is a baseball coach at the high school.
Yeah.
And his wife was a teacher here, but she's home with their 5 children. So I have 3 current students here.
Yes.
And I'll have 2 more soon.
Yes.
And I told him, I said, hopefully I don't ruin your good name, because he's done a great job, and his wife has done a great job.
Yes, they both
I don't want to, sometimes the superintendent, always light. So
you have to make some difficult decisions that people don't understand.
That's
and
true.
Just so the audience knows, I was superintendent here at Goshen Community Schools too. So we have this common interest. So and I also have grandchildren in this district, so it's really fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and we worked together as superintendents.
We did.
Too.
Yeah, we've been colleagues for a long time, so it's good. Yeah. Well, thank you for coming to Goshen. We're all very glad you did.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for saying that.
Yeah. So, okay, you took on the role of superintendent again.
Yes.
During a very contentious time, right, for educators just after the pandemic, and I mean, COVID-19 really impacted our classrooms, and we had all those months, are we in school, are we out of school? And educators had to adjust to e-learning and virtual learning environments, and now, parts of those things are still happening in some classrooms, not all. Anyway, now that we've been back for a couple years in person, what repercussions do you think we're seeing, as a profession that were a result of our time in lockdown? Are there still these things?
I retired right before
that's right.
the pandemic
Yes.
in summer of 19.
Yes.
And I think it was very difficult for educators during that time.
It was.
And difficult for kids and families. And there's a difference now. You can kind of see it and feel it. What some of those differences are. This is my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's what this is about, your opinion.
Yeah, I think there's some academic delays that students are having. I had the good fortune of filling in for someone mid-COVID for a high school entrepreneurship class that the teacher left mid-year, and I finished the year for them.
Yeah, I do remember that.
And most of that was done online.
Yes.
And it was difficult, but different. And, we kind of got a little groove going as a teacher. So I think that worked for high school students that were high achievers.
Yes.
And we were able to, I think, make some headway in learning. I just think it was very difficult for younger children.
Yeah.
And so some of I think the data kind of bears this out, that there are reading losses and kids are behind in reading. The social emotional kind of issues. There's been a lot of, I don't know, more screen time maybe. I'm not sure. It's hard to infer causation from correlation, but I suspect that, I walked into a high school and during a lunch period, this was last year, my first experience doing this. And,
right.
And everybody was calm and relaxed, but everybody was not talking, and there wasn't this crescendo
like
of noise.
Buzz.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It was because kids were looking at their phone, they were listening to music,
Yeah.
they were doing things that were just by themselves and not interacting with others. And I think that can be detrimental for long-term flourishing for kids. Thinking about the different factors that impact to be a healthy, happy adult.
Yeah.
I think that kind of gets in their way, so they're having to grow through some of that. But I think that was probably the biggest thing. And then I've noticed, teachers are doing wonderful work. This is not a negative towards a teacher, but just kind of a reality. I think there's a lot of teacher burnout right now. It was tough during those years and stressful. And then coming out of that, they're not seeing the results that they had before because some of this learning loss.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating to them. They feel like they're doing, teaching, running their classroom as efficiently as possible, trying to maximize students' learning learning in the classroom. And I think it's just been a burden for them a little bit. And then there's a lot more dysregulated behaviors with children in the classroom.
Right.
I feel like it's just kind of enhanced. There's always been there, but it's just gotten a little worse. And so I think it's been tough on teachers that way. But I feel like there's this like turning right now, and everybody's starting to see things brighter.
Okay.
And things are becoming better. So we just have to keep that trend going.
Right.
Yeah.
So like that's good that maybe there's this turning. And you perceive that here at Goshen Schools. Now, do you share that when you meet with your colleagues or other school districts or school leaders also starting to feel like, okay, maybe we're at the end of this negative impact from COVID and we're starting to, see positive? Are you hearing that from colleagues?
I see it in Goshen. I can't, I don't know that I've had that direct question to some of my colleagues.
Sure.
But even from, just talking to them, they feel like, I think that would be a statement I could make from, extrapolating certain things from different conversations. I could say that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's hopeful. It was a big, on the national news, we saw lots of coverage of the learning gaps, right during COVID or what's happened, worry about what was happening to our students' achievement across the country. And then right after COVID, there was a lot of coverage of that. And now it's a little bit almost like common knowledge, right? Or it's like, in passing, almost, well, because of the pandemic losses, So it's
just accepted now.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. It's real. We can't go backwards. We can only go forward. So, yeah.
That's kind of our focus here is just how can we get 1% better than we were last year.
Yeah.
And as long as you're doing that, time's on your side.
Yeah.
The trend's going to keep moving forward,
Yeah.
and you'll get more students doing better.
Yeah.
And hopefully you just keep that trend going, and you see kids will catch back up by the time they graduate, and then get a good start to their careers and life.
So that's a great segue. Speaking of careers, and college, the whole post-high school world. Are there any of these impacts still around, do you think, for kids, like the pandemic impact as they leave high school and go on to the next steps? Are you hearing any of that? Like the COVID years really damaged them in this way or something along those lines? Or not so much?
I haven't heard so much of that. I've heard that, everybody's working very hard at trying to get students out into the community to get experiences, work-based learning kind of experiences, CTE training, to add that to the academic training that they're getting in high school.
Yes, right, absolutely.
And that's new work for us. And I would say some feedback from employers have been, turn my head for a moment and the student's back on their phone doing something, and that's not good.
Yeah.
We expect them to not, that's kind of been, I guess, a feedback thing I've heard multiple times from different employers and things. But, I think if we can just work with kids and help them begin to flourish more, in Goshen, we look at kids in 3 different areas. One is cognitive and academic, and I think cognitively there have been some impacts on kids, and we have to, use the best learning science that's out there on how do we get kids to continuously learn so we can close the gap and get them back where they need to be academically. And so there's the cognitive academic area. Then we call it area 2, a social emotional area, and that includes getting ready to be for the environment of a business someday, to adult skills and skills that you expect them, the state's calling them employability skills, and we're using the same language and the same kind of skill set of employability skills for kids. But that's kind of the social emotional area, and trying to be skills based and focus on how do you communicate, how do you collaborate with people, how do you have a good work ethic, how do you discipline yourself so you're bringing value to an employer someday and to your college work or your high school work. And then the last area is often neglected, but it's physical neurological. And there's this whole well-being part of being a person. And the whole person is brought to a learning experience or a work experience. And so being physically fit, having good vision, ability to hear and process auditory information, all those things can impact the learning experience for children. So we're working very hard at trying to make sure that's not a barrier to learning for kids. So if you think of all those 3 areas, cognitive, academic, social, emotional, and then physical, neurological, we need to look at all those kids. So we're kind of designing our MTSS, or multi-tiered systems of support for kids, in such a way that we're focusing on those 3 tiers, or 3 areas, to do our tiered interventions for them, and being purposeful. So that's a lot of work we're doing.
That's
I think
a lot of work.
Being very good at that is so important because of some of this learning loss that we've had, and preparing them for college and getting them ready for that experience, or preparing them for the workforce. So there is a big shift from just college, thinking of college differently. There's always advanced training and advanced education kids need, but maybe it doesn't have to be the traditional 4-year college to get there. But
I like that. I think that's a real holistic way that you have visioned here for Goshen schools to help kids. And you're right, it does very much relate to the pandemic. Losses are the things that we all heard about. So our school board has just kind of adopted some core values. So we always put students first. We educate the whole child, and we define it in those 3 areas. And we design systems to support them, both if they're gifted in those areas or if they're struggling in those areas. We
more than a growth mindset, we're looking at now a craftsman mindset.
Oh, yeah.
And
Say more. Yep.
It's almost the same thing as your typical growth mindset. We just throw the concept of craftsman on there because we just want everybody to get a little bit better than they were before.
Yes.
People think in terms of huge steps,
Right.
and you need to just continually apply yourself in such a way that you get a little better every day for a lifetime, and that's what craftsmen do in their profession.
Yes.
We want our educators to do that, we want our students to do that, and hopefully our families and parents at home are thinking in that terms too. How can I become a little bit better parent
Right.
today than I was yesterday?
Yeah, yeah.
And-
And crafting a life for yourself that
And
is
be thoughtful.
all those
and
areas.
planning and
Yeah.
organize and figure out how you can
Nice.
apply yourself.
nice.
Yeah. And the last one, of course, is well, we have two more. Teamwork.
Okay.
So everything we're doing now is, I think, post-pandemic for support of the teachers too.
Sure.
We believe that everybody belongs to a team, and we have team leaders, and we have, we work in teams to design programs for kids.
Right.
And so teamwork is big, and we want to teach students to be part of a team and to collaborate and to do that kind of work. And everybody in this community is part of the community as well. So
Right.
that's part of the teamwork too. And then last, of course, is integrity.
Very good.
Yeah.
Those are
Do
good
what you say
values.
you're going to do.
Yeah. It's easy to put that on paper.
Yeah, it's hard to do.
Sometimes it's really hard to do.
Very hard to do.
But it's
yeah.
very important.
Yeah.
That's good. I had a thought. I triggered a while ago when you were talking about the social emotional, and then your observation of the high school cafeteria, right? And the kids on their phones. What have you done with just a little tangent, the cell phone policy? Now, I think that's been a whole awareness, and a lot of states, as Indiana has as well, have passed some laws to
Yes.
try to prohibit cell phone use in schools.
As part of during the instructional part of the day.
Yeah, during the instructional part of the
So
day.
during passing periods
Yes.
and during lunch,
Yes.
we are allowing students
Yes.
to
Yeah.
look at their phone, to use
Yeah.
their phone, after school use their phone. Some schools would, it would be perfectly okay to say no phones allowed at school, or,
Yeah.
they have to be in
Like
a
the whole
locker.
day, they can't be out, kind of
Right.
thing.
We've allowed it during planning
Yeah.
or passing
Passing.
periods and
And lunch.
lunchtime.
How's it going?
Yeah, I think it's going fairly well. The difficulty is always getting consistency of application of any kind
Yes,
of rule like that.
absolutely.
It's helpful to have the state tell us we have to do that.
Yeah.
Because a lot of schools have been struggling, including us, on how to use
How
it
to-
during class. Because some teachers in the past, quite honestly, could use them
Yes,
effectively as an instructional tool.
absolutely.
I would say, though, that overall, the thing that gets me about the use of that tool, everybody has a computer or a laptop or an iPad
Sure.
for their use in the classroom.
Right.
So you don't necessarily need those to use their phones.
Right.
Kids get notifications constantly. And they do get used for kind of nefarious purposes at times with kids that you just are sad that they would do that. But, that's how they learn. They
Yeah.
make mistakes, and that's
Yeah.
shoot videos of kids doing
Yeah.
the wrong thing or doing something just to get it on video so you can
Yeah.
post it.
Yeah.
It does not make for a safe learning environment.
No, right.
So I think it's helped with some of that. And
I bet.
Yeah.
So mixed. There's hard things about it, but overall, you seem to feel good about it.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Good.
Definitely would say I feel good about it.
Yeah.
Would like to eliminate more use of it.
Yeah. And maybe as time goes on, this is like a kind of a learning period for everybody,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. All those notifications to kids, it's constantly
Yeah.
distracting their brain.
Yes, it is.
And it's very
It
addictive
is. Yeah.
for kids to have those notifications. It's hard to turn
Right.
it down and not think about it.
Yep.
Same thing for adults. And
Absolutely.
actually,
Absolutely.
if I were to have my phone out, which I don't right now, and put it down here, the research says that it's very distracting to us having a good, healthy conversation and connecting.
No, I do believe that, and I have mine out because I'm kind of aware of the time.
You have
so I'm
to, and
kind
I
of
talk a
checking
lot,
time.
so that's good.
But I get that because try to ignore anything that I feel it on my watch or like
You do.
it is. It's a distraction.
And everybody expects instant communication too because
Yes,
of that.
I
You
know.
can't write a letter the next day. To
no,
be sent out by the end of the
no,
week.
you cannot.
to
It has
answer someone
happen
anymore.
right away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's switch to parents a little bit. What should parents be aware of as these kind of about this conversation that we're just having about the learning loss and the social emotional behavioral loss and all of these losses that happened during the pandemic, and maybe we're turning the corner now, but how does this impact parents, or what should parents know?
I think being very attuned to what's going on with your child, how they're acting. You know, sometimes they'll be teenagers, and they're going to act a certain way, and then the next day they're fine. But look at patterns and things that persist, and don't be afraid to ask for help. And engage the school, reach out to the school. The school has resources available to help problem solve with the parents. Our goal, and I'm sure all the school districts would have the similar goal, would be to, hey, how can we partner with parents to help with their children? So if you notice suffering, which comes with life sometimes, but particularly if it's persistent, it's not just better the next day, and pay attention, talk to your kids, you know, ask them how things are going, and then if you notice something's not right, then reach out to the school and get some additional help, or through your church, you know, pastor or other folks that can support the child, and you as a parent. I think so. Maybe we encapsulate that in parent engagement. So if parents are trying to raise a whole child that's healthy and flourishing, kind of think of it in those same terms: academically, cognitive academically, area 2 social emotionally, and then physical, neurologically, health, wellness, kind of eating habits and exercise, and and if parents are noticing things that are struggling in any of those areas, you know, put a plan together with your child, or reach out to someone to get some help to do that. And don't be stigmatized by asking that. All parents have issues with their kids. I mean, I've never known a parent who hasn't. So, and it's nice to get help and have someone walk with you a little bit.
That's very good. I agree. And there are resources at schools that people can help. Yes, and a lot of times parents feel like they're busy, I don't want to bother them, and it's true, school personnel are busy, but they're also there to help parents and families. So. And
we have connections with people in the community that, and ministries or businesses or not-for-profits that are designed just to help for those situations. So we can tap the shoulder of those organizations as well.
Absolutely. Is the parenting program still kind of going on in the county? Triple P was a real focus for a while. Is that still happening?
Positive parenting. And so we're doing that. We're participating with that, and that's running. We started a parent engagement committee, group of parents that are working with us to give us feedback on how we can engage them more. What kind of information do they want to have? We're in our first year and actually we received a grant called the Effect Grant, and it's helping us design this whole program. You know, in old school terms, you know, it's like sometimes nothing's new, but there's a new face to it.
Yes, correct.
Times are a little different, but parent involvement and how we as educators can engage parents in their child's education will only enhance and help children and parents. So we just want to make sure that what we're doing is enhancing that parent engagement with their children. And if there's some little things we can do, we're going to do them. If there's big things we can do, we're going to do those as well. But we're right now in a planning phase as far as working with our parent group.
Nice. That's exciting. Does the grant include money for staff?
It includes, it's $50,000 a year. And we're using some of it for parents, but or for some staff support. It doesn't pay for a whole person, as you might imagine.
And I was like, nope, that's not going to do it.
So we've reassigned someone to do the support work there, and then in our district, we have Lori Schreiner, who is our Chief People Officer. Who's doing that kind of.
Good.
She's leading that work. And then, and so, and then the schools are all going to be involved, because eventually our teachers and our educators are going to be hopefully putting these best practices in place and executing on our plan, and we're going to have better parent engagement in the district.
That's good.
Our strategic plan, we have 3 engagements we care about. One is our employee engagement. 2 is our parent engagement, we just talked about, and the third one is student engagement. We think engaged students, and we haven't even defined that completely yet, but it appears as though we're going to define that, like, well, you're in the marching band, that's an engaged student, as long as they're, engaged in the academic part of it too, not just marching band, but doing that work, or if you're involved in sport or a club. What other things would kids want to be involved in? We want every one of our students to be engaged in something other than just the classroom work. And some of our pathways are becoming that for the older kids. What can we do for the younger kids? The youngest of our students, maybe engagement is more classroom centric. As you get older, it's like, what can you do outside and after school? But yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah, so those are three engagements we're working on.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Yep. Good. So what would you say the strategy going forward is for school districts that are looking to close the learning gaps? I mean, you've hit a lot of them for you here in Goshen. Is there any other things that you would add about strategies for schools to use?
I would say our core values, putting those in place, having great core values. Then we have our strategic plan. We have 4 areas. The first one is financial stewardship and stability. So we want to make sure we manage our budget, that we're getting as many dollars in and leveraging those for student learning, and taking care of our facilities for long-term, you know, and not just cutting corners to put more money somewhere else so we can get by in the short term. And then the second area is student achievement, which we kind of outlined, the MTSS process, using data to drive instruction and 1% better. You know, stretch goal would be 3% better in anything. But we do the ABCs, attendance. We're tracking behavior referrals to the office. And then the third one is course performance, which is the academic typical things you see on a I-Learn test in Indiana, or a reading, I read 3 test or something like that. And then we have operational excellence, which we look at how we focus on engaging our bus drivers in the process, and to make sure we're running a great transportation system, food service systems, and good processes that are in place. And the last one is people. How do we engage people? So I think I don't know that any one little initiative is going to be the answer to closing the gap or making things better, but something that happens over a short couple of years has great impacts long term. So I think the way you address that is through a long-term strategic application of excellence, doing your work really well, and doing it in a way that's manageable and it's not outrageous and too much urgency. You have to have urgency, but not too much urgency. So you don't get burnout, and you have staff that are flourishing, parents and families and students that are flourishing. And I think you'll catch back up, and kids will be in a great place in the end.
Oh, that's so exciting. It makes me want to come back to work.
That's what we do in public education, isn't it?
It's great. You know, when we were talking, the Good to Great book was going through my mind about like the flywheel.
Oh, yeah.
Like when you do that work and you kind of get everybody going around on the wheel, and then it starts really taking off, right?
Yeah,
the energy,
push and push and push.
that synergy and that energy, and when things start clicking. So I think you're developing the flywheel.
Yeah, that's great. We're pushing really hard.
Yes,
but trying to be thoughtful about how we do it.
Yes,
and,
for sure.
You know, we talk about elegant simplicity, and realize you don't have to start out being perfect, but just start out and move down the path.
Make small improvement, like you said.
Small improvements. And
every day get better than yesterday.
That simplicity becomes very elegant.
It does. You're right.
And
I like
impactful, I think. Yeah.
I like it. Good job, Jim. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, as we kind of wrap up on this topic, is there anything else that comes to your mind that you'd like to share with the bigger world out there?
No, I hope people stay positive, keep speaking to positive. I think we as human beings oftentimes can speak things, maybe and make it happen. If we say positive things, we speak positive things, and we believe positive things start to happen. It's very easy to watch social media or watch the news, and all you see are negative things going on all the time. And the reality is there's so many beautiful things happening every day in a school through interactions with teachers and parents and kids and just in the community as a whole.
For sure.
Take time to notice the beauty and be grateful. That was one of the first things I did when I came back. My very first as interim, talked to the staff, and I said, you know, the neuroscientists say that if you are focused on gratitude, the part of your brain that lights up when you're thinking about good things and blessings that you have, you can't think negative and be depressed at the same time.
Yeah, right.
And I think so. The more we practice gratitude and appreciation for all the good things that are happening around us in our lives, like it becomes to manifest itself, and we'll see more and more of that. And I think it may be a lost art, but hopefully we can gain that back. I think when we're at our best as human beings, we see those positives. And I hope educators can help lead that kind of focus on the positive. There's plenty of things to be upset about, but there's even more things to be thankful for the blessings that you can see every day.
Absolutely. Well said. Amen, brother.
Amen.
I so agree.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, my pleasure.
I'm going to be a big fan of your podcast now. And
Okay, good.
Pay attention to it.
Okay, good.
I've always been a big fan of you as an educator and the great work that you did as superintendent. And
well, thanks.
you know, I loved when I had an opportunity to get to work with you because you were that positive person setting the tone for people. So thank you.
Well, I tried. Thank you.
And
the feelings mutual, Jim. I always enjoyed working with you too. Thanks for joining me today, Jim, and thank you all for watching this episode of the K-12 Corner. And our hope for this podcast, by the way, is that school administrators, teachers, parents, community members can use this show as a resource, connecting them to conversations that we're having in the K-12 world and giving them ideas about things they can do in their own local communities. So be sure to follow the K-12 Corner on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts so that you can get the latest episodes as soon as they're available. Again, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time, everybody.